Good morning. Hope you had a great Memorial Day yesterday and that you're getting ready now to finish off your week, short week. And we're going to kick it off together this morning looking at the next phrase in the 10th Psalm. We started there yesterday, again, a psalm with no superscription, no background to it. Just again, this opening question of David, wondering why God seems to be ignoring the situation, why God isn't more hands-on in David's predicament. And then he's going to begin in verse 2. Now we're going to look at over a couple of days, actually, to get through it all. David's going to begin to describe the wicked, who he is referring to, why he is wondering who these are, who these people are that David is wondering why God isn't dealing with. I believe I got that out correctly. And he's going to give several descriptions of these people. John Phillips, in his commentary, says there's no less than 26 different descriptions here of the wickedness, ultimately, I believe, pointing towards a description of the ultimate of evil, and that is the Antichrist. But he's going to describe here for us the wickedness, and what I would like for us to do as we look at this is to look at ourselves and look into our own hearts and lives and see if any of these things that David is describing here, if we see a hint of them, or maybe even more than a hint in our own life, are we willing to address those things and allow God to convict and to do the necessary work of removing that negative thing from our life. And so David's I'm gonna make it a little easier than 26. I think we'll probably just look at, going to kind of group it down to about 8 different things here that David uses to describe the conduct and the character of evildoers. And I'll flash back to a question I asked in my message Sunday. Isn't it interesting that for 3 years Judas walked with the disciples and no one noticed him? No one realized that Judas was different than the other 11, or better, no one noticed that the other 11 were different from Judas. And so my challenge for us as we look at these characteristics that David gives of the wicked person, that we are cautious to look at them and be sure that these characteristics, these descriptors we're doing everything in our power to keep that from being present in our life. And so beginning in verse 2, we're going to deal with one that somebody says, preacher, you're not preaching anymore, you're meddling. That may be where we're starting at today, is straight into the meddling, just skip the preaching altogether. As David says here, the wicked in his pride doth persecute the poor. So the first thing that David is going to address in the life of the wicked then is this issue of pride. And that the pride, then really it's almost kind of a double whammy, to use an old phrase. Because of their pride, number one, they persecute the poor, number two. And so we have kind of 2 in 1 here of the characteristics David's going to be describing here as characteristics of the wicked person. Again, the pride, we know that pride was the original sin of Lucifer against God as he raised up his own heart and his head to be greater than God and to rebel against God. And truthfully, you could make an argument in many situations that pride typically is part of, if not the root of, pretty much every other sin against people. That pride is a dangerous dangerous thing. Most of us are quick to recognize pride in the life of another, and we don't like it. But it's something that's very difficult for us to see in our own life. And David says in this instance, the pride, because of that pride, they have kind of a inflated, exaggerated opinion of themselves, and so therefore they justify taking advantage of others. Because they think they are they deserve, or they are above the law, whatever. That pride motivates them to take advantage of other people, and so one of the things that David is questioning here is, Lord, why are you standing afar off? Why aren't you doing something? Why aren't you dealing with the proud who are taking advantage, using their own schemes and plotting and planning to take advantage of those around them? The second thing David says is, let them be taken in devices that they have imagined. And so David's prayer for the prideful is that their own trap, much as we saw in chapter 9, was that they would be captured, they would be ensnared by their own trap. That even their pride would be false pride, that they think they're smarter, they think they are better, and that their own trap would catch them. And so the first danger that David describes for us is then the danger of pride. The second one, it's a little harder to put into, the first one is easy to say, pride. The second one, I don't know that there is just one word that you could hang on David's second description of the wicked person. It's more of a I don't see much of a way to describe it short of a sentence. Look what he says in verse 3. He says, the wicked boasteth of his heart's desire, and blesseth the covetous, whom the Lord abhorreth. This is kind of a spinoff of the pride almost, is that the evil person is proud of their evil doings. The wicked boasteth of his heart's desire. He brags, he's proud of the desires of his heart, and that they are able to take advantage of the poor, and he blessed the covenant. He's proud of. He brags on those who are greedy, so it's kind of a odd description here that David gives, but I think most of us can identify to some extent with that. We know we live in a world where it seems like the greedy, the covetous, to use the biblical word, are often elevated and even kind of praised and recognized for what they have been able to do. We tend sometimes in our culture to call it a shrewd businessman, when the truth is it's not so much shrewdness as it is crudeness. Their greed, their covetousness there. And again, listen, there's nothing wrong with being successful. I hope all of you are. There's nothing wrong with achievement, but what he's talking about here is the wicked who exploit others to get where they're at. There's nothing wrong, absolutely wrong, nothing wrong whatsoever with a person being elevated in the workplace to getting a promotion. There's nothing wrong with getting the corner office. There's nothing wrong with getting the raise. I have a bigger issue with the people who have no ambition to ever do those things. There's nothing wrong with having ambition. There's nothing wrong with success. Well, the problem is that David is talking about here is when we use sinful ways or methods to get there. When we lie, cheat, steal, sleep our way to the promotion or to the raise. That's what I think David is talking about here. Is that when people again, it's one thing to want the corner office, is another thing to cheat and lie against your competitor for that office. We're all aware that many of the people who are the most successful and have the most have taken it from someone else in a wrong way. And so I think the warning for us then is to be very cautious about our actions, our attitudes. Again, nothing wrong with ambition, nothing wrong with success, wanting the promotion, working hard for that promotion. What God is talking about here is the wickedness of going after those things in a less than honest, honorable manner. And so the third thing that he says in verse 4 then is the wicked. Again, we see this word, with the pride of his countenance will not seek after God. God is not in all his thoughts. Again, we see that root of pride playing itself out into other areas. The pride, he says, they will not, because of their pride, they will not seek after God, and God is not in his thoughts. It's the sin of ignoring God. It's the sin of rejecting God. Again, to go back to that previous thought of ambition leading us toward that new job. Again, the idea I think that flows through this passage is that the wicked person doesn't consider God in that promotion. Will that promotion take me out of church? Will that promotion take me away from my family? Is that the position God wants me in? Just to kind of tie these together. And so, again, pride, it takes a very arrogant person to ignore God, to go through their life thinking, I don't need God. I can do this on my own. And so this is obvious, something that all of us, I think, it would be very apparent to us of how this would be a sin that would anger God. And that last phrase in verse 4, where it says, God is not in all his thoughts. I think there's something there that we need to kind of take that and turn that a little bit and look at it from the other side. He says God is not in all his thoughts, and David is kind of writing against that, tells us then that God should be in all of our thoughts. We include, this is going to sound crazy, we include God in our godly thoughts. When we think about church, we think about God. We think about the Bible, we think about God. When we think about Easter, we think about God. We think about Christmas, we think about God. David says God should be in all of our thoughts. Everything that we think, everything that we do, we should make room for God, and only this pride that David is talking about would keep that from happening. When it comes down to it, every thought I have, again, it's easy to sit here at my desk today and think it through. And I know, just like you do early this morning, just sitting there, you know that you need God in everything and every decision and every thought. But the truth is, we get up and we go through our day, and kind of almost unwittingly, pride sneaks in and gets in our way, and we do things without consulting or considering what God wants for us. And so today we're going to wrap up there as we walk through these descriptions of the evil man. And I believe that's a good place for us to stop and chew a little bit, to stop and digest just a little bit of what God is trying to say to us. That as we go through our day, is God in all of our thoughts? Again, we think about God when we get to doctor's report. We think about God when things go bad, but he says God is not in all his thoughts. As believers, God should be in all our thoughts, in all of our decisions. He should be the primary part of that decision. I think if we did that, we'd find out we made better decisions and choices that didn't come back to bite us quite so often. But pride will cause us to think, I can do this on my own. I can handle this. I don't really need God. And so this morning, I hope as your day gets kicked off, you'll kick it off with God. And then you'll walk with him all day long and keep him in all your thoughts. All right. Thank you for being here today. We'll see you tomorrow morning early, if not bright. Have a good day.